You ever have one of those moments where a tiny glitch in your memory turns your whole world upside down? Like you swear something happened a certain way, but everyone else says no, it didn't. That's the Mandela Effect, right? But what if it's not just a collective misremembering? What if it's something darker, slipping through the cracks of reality itself? My name's Adam Cox. I'm 42 now, living in this quiet suburb outside Seattle. But back when I was a kid in the 80s, growing up in that creaky old Victorian house in rural Maine, something shifted. And it didn't just change a silly detail like whether the Berenstain Bears had an A or an E in their name. No, this one rewrote my entire childhood, and it's been haunting me ever since. Let me tell you about it step by step, because if I don't get this out, I feel like it'll swallow me whole. It started innocent enough, but trust me, by the end, you'll be questioning your own memories too. I was born in 1983, in a small town called Eldridge, Maine. Population maybe 2,000 on a good day. My folks were simple people. Dad worked at the lumber mill. Mom was a schoolteacher. We lived in this big, drafty house on the edge of town, the kind with too many rooms and shadows that seemed to move when you weren't looking. As a kid, I had this vivid memory of my bedroom window overlooking a dense forest. Not just any woods, but this thick, ancient pine grove that stretched on forever, with paths that twisted like veins. I'd stare out there at night, imagining all sorts of adventures. But the thing that stuck with me most was the whispering tree. That's what I called it. A massive oak right at the forest's edge, gnarled and twisted, with bark that looked like it had faces carved into it by time itself. I remember climbing it once when I was about 8, scraping my knee on the way up, and hearing, well, whispers. Not wind, not animals, actual voices, murmuring things I couldn't quite make out. It scared me, but in that thrilling kid way, you know? I'd tell my friends about it at school, and we'd dare each other to go near it after dark. Fast forward to my 20s. I'd moved away for college, got a job in tech, tried to leave that small town life behind. But one Christmas, I went back to visit my parents. The house was the same, peeling paint, squeaky floors. But something felt off the second I pulled into the driveway. I couldn't put my finger on it until I went upstairs to my old room. The window, it didn't look out on the forest anymore. Instead, there was just a flat, open field, dotted with a few scraggly bushes and leading right up to the neighbor's fence. No pines, no paths, and definitely no whispering tree. I stood there, staring, my heart pounding like I'd seen a ghost. "Mom," I called down, trying to keep my voice steady. "What happened to the woods out back?" She poked her head up the stairs, wiping her hands on a dish towel, and gave me this puzzled look. "Woods? Adam, honey, there's never been any woods there. It's always been the Thompsons' pasture." I laughed it off at first, thinking maybe I'd mixed it up with some other memory. But that night, lying in bed, I couldn't shake it. The air felt thicker, like the room was holding its breath. The next day, I dug through old photo albums in the attic. Dust everywhere, cobwebs clinging to my fingers. I found pictures from my birthday parties, family vacations, but nothing showing the backyard clearly. Except one, a faded Polaroid from when I was 6. Me grinning with a missing tooth, standing by what looked like the edge of trees. But when I squinted, the background was blurry, almost like it had been smudged. I showed it to Dad over coffee. "See? Right there, the forest." He adjusted his glasses, peered at it, and shook his head slowly. "Son, that's just a shadow from the barn. No forest. You always had such an imagination." His words hit me like a cold wave. Imagination? This wasn't some made-up story. I could feel the pine needles under my feet, smell the damp earth. That evening, as the sun dipped low, I walked out to the field. The ground was uneven, like it had been disturbed long ago. I knelt down, running my hand over the grass, and that's when I found it, a small, buried root, twisted and old, poking through the soil. It felt familiar, like touching an old scar. As I pulled at it gently, a whisper seemed to echo in my mind. "Remember." I yanked my hand back, heart racing, and hurried inside. That night, sleep didn't come easy. Dreams of twisting paths, voices calling my name from the dark. A few weeks later, back in Seattle, I couldn't let it go. I started researching online, late into the night, coffee going cold beside me. That's when I stumbled upon the Mandela Effect forums. People talking about shared false memories, fruit of the Loom logo with a cornucopia that never existed, or Shazam the movie with Sinbad that apparently wasn't real. But buried in the threads were stories like mine, personal shifts, where someone's entire past seemed altered. One guy swore his childhood home had a basement that vanished. Another said her twin sister disappeared from family photos. It chilled me, because what if this wasn't just misremembering? What if realities were overlapping or fracturing? I posted my story anonymously, describing the whispering tree in detail. Responses flooded in, most dismissive, but one stood out. "I grew up in Eldridge too. There was a forest there once, but it burned down in '79. No one talks about it. Kids went missing." My blood ran cold. burned down? Before I was born, but I remembered playing there years later. I messaged the user, but their account went dark the next day, deleted like it never existed. That's when things started getting weird in my daily life. I'd wake up with pine sap on my hands, sticky and real, even though I hadn't been near a tree in weeks. Or I'd hear faint whispers in the shower, words like, "come back," swirling down the drain. I told myself it was stress, maybe early signs of something medical. But then, at work, during a meeting, my boss handed me a file and said, "Adam, you've been with us since '05, right?" I nodded, but later, checking my resume, it said '07. A 2-year gap. Panic set in. I called my old college roommate Jake. "Hey, remember that road trip we took junior year to the Grand Canyon?" Silence on the line. "Grand Canyon? Nah man, we went to Yellowstone. You okay?" Click. The world felt like it was tilting. That night, I drove back to Eldridge unannounced. The house loomed in the moonlight, windows like empty eyes. I snuck into the backyard, flashlight beam cutting through the dark. The field was silent, but as I reached the spot where the root had been, the ground felt soft, almost pulsing. I dug with my hands, dirt caking under my nails, until I hit something hard, a small wooden box. Inside, a child's drawing, faded but clear, a tree with faces, and a boy climbing it, me, but scrawled at the bottom, "Don't forget, they took it away." My breath caught. Who took what? I pocketed the drawing and fled back to my car, engine roaring to life. On the drive home, the radio static buzzed, and through it, a whisper, "Adam." I swerved, nearly off the road. From then on, the changes accelerated. Old friends would recall events differently. My first bike without training wheels was red, not blue. My high school prom date was Sarah, not Emily. Each shift felt like a thread pulling at the fabric of my life, unraveling it. I stopped sleeping, pacing my apartment, jotting down memories before they slipped away. One entry. The whispering tree wasn't just a play spot. I remembered hiding there during a storm when I was 10. Rain pounding, and seeing shapes in the trunks, figures, tall and thin, watching. They didn't move, but their eyes glowed faintly. I shook it off as kid fear back then. But now, what if they were real, and the Mandela shift was hiding them? Or worse, bringing them back? I decided to confront it head on. Booked a flight to Maine, rented a car, and headed to the local library in Eldridge. The place was musty, shelves sagging with forgotten books. The librarian, an elderly woman with wire-rimmed glasses, eyed me curiously as I asked for old town records. "Forest fires in the '70s? She nodded slowly. "Oh yes, the big one in '79. Took out acres. But funny, no one ever asks about that." She pulled a microfiche reel, and as I scrolled through yellowed newspaper clippings, there it was. "Mysterious blaze claims Eldridge Woods. Search for missing children ongoing." Photos of charred stumps, and a list of names. My stomach dropped. One was a boy named Timothy Cox. Cox, my last name, but I had no siblings. The article described how the fire started unexplained, whispers of strange lights, seen beforehand. I printed copies, hands trembling. As I left, the librarian touched my arm. "Be careful, dear. Some things are best left buried." Her words lingered like fog. Back at the house, my parents were away visiting relatives. I sat up in the living room, papers spread out. The drawing from the box matched sketches in the articles. Kids had drawn face trees before the fire. That night, as wind howled outside, I heard scratching at the window. Not branches, there were none. I crept upstairs, flashlight in hand. The field was empty, but in the distance, a shape flickered, like a tree sprouting from nothing. I blinked, and it was gone. But the whispers started again, clearer now. We waited. "Come home." Sleep evaded me, replaced by visions of the forest regrowing in my mind, tendrils reaching into my thoughts. By morning, I found pine needles on my pillow. Real ones. I knew then, this wasn't just a memory glitch. The Mandela Effect had cracked open a door, and something from that lost forest was seeping through. Desperate, I reached out online again, finding a small community of shift survivors. One woman, Elena, messaged me privately. "It's not random. The changes are targeted. Mine started with a childhood pet that never existed, but now, things follow me." We video called, her face pale, eyes darting. "Listen, Adam, if you dig too deep, it pulls you in. The whispers? They're invitations." Before I could ask more, her screen glitched, and the call dropped. Her account vanished. Isolation crept in, but so did determination. I returned to the field, shovel in hand this time. Digging deeper, past the root, I uncovered more. A rusted locket with a photo inside. A family, including a boy who looked just like me, but with another child beside him. Timothy, my brother. The ground shifted slightly under me, like a sigh. As I stood, the air grew heavy, scented with pine. A whisper brushed my ear. Welcome back. The changes weren't stopping at memories now. Objects in my apartment rearranged themselves. Books I'd never owned appearing on shelves. Photos morphing overnight. One showed me as a kid with a sibling I'd never had. Timothy's face stared back, eyes pleading. I burned it, but the smoke smelled like burning woods. Nights blurred into days, filled with research. Old maps of Eldridge showed the forest existing well into the 80s, contradicting the fire records. A glitch in history? Or a cover-up? I visited the Thompsons next door, knocking hesitantly. Mr. Thompson, grizzled and wary, cracked the door. What do you want? I asked about the land. Always been pasture, he grumbled. But as he closed the door, I caught a glimpse inside. A painting on the wall of a dense forest, with a twisted tree center stage. My tree. Paranoia set in. Was everyone in on it? Or were they shifted too, unaware? I started recording myself sleeping, phone propped up. Playback showed nothing at first, but on the third night, shadows lengthening across the room, forming branches that reached toward the bed. And audio, whispers layering over my snores. Brother, join us. I hadn't told anyone about Timothy. How did it know? I fled back to Seattle, but the whispers followed, echoing in crowded streets, in elevator music. Friends noticed my distraction, but when I confided in one, Mark, he laughed. Mandela Effect? Come on, Adam, get some rest. The next day, he texted, Hey, remember that time we met in 05? Wait, no, 07. Even he was changing. It culminated one stormy evening. Alone in my apartment, lights flickering, I spread out all the evidence, drawings, articles, the locket. As thunder rolled, the power cut out. In the dark, the whispers swelled, surrounding me. The fire wasn't real. We hid. Now, remember. Flashes of memory surged. Not mine, but Timothy's, hiding in the tree during the fire. But it wasn't flames, it was lights, pulling kids into the woods, shapes taking them, and me, us, escaping. But at a cost, one stayed behind. The room grew cold, wind whistling through sealed windows. I felt hands on my shoulders, light as branches. Come home, I screamed, bolting for the door, but it wouldn't budge. Panic clawed at me until, with a final push, it gave way. I ran into the rain, not looking back. That was 6 months ago. I've been on the move since, piecing together more. The Mandela Effect isn't a bug, it's a veil, thinning where realities touch. And in Eldridge, something ancient lurks behind it, hungry for those who remember. If you're listening, check your own memories. That childhood toy, that family story, does it still match? Because if it doesn't, they might be coming for you next. That night in the rain, soaked to the bone and shaking, I didn't stop driving until the city lights of Seattle were far behind me. I ended up in some cheap motel off the interstate, the kind with flickering neon signs and thin walls that let every truck rumble through your chest. I locked the door, pushed the rickety dresser against it, and sat on the edge of the bed staring at my reflection in the dark TV screen. My eyes looked hollow, like someone had scooped out pieces of me and left the rest to sag. The whispers had quieted for the moment, but I could still feel them, like a low hum under my skin, waiting for me to let my guard down. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that shape in the field, the tree growing where it shouldn't, branches stretching toward the house like fingers. The next morning, with barely 3 hours of restless dozing, I knew running wasn't going to fix this. Whatever had started back in Eldridge wasn't tied to one place. It was tied to me, to my memories, to what I'd lost, or what had been taken. I opened the locket again, the one I'd dug up, and studied the photo inside. There we were, Mom, Dad, me at maybe 7 years old, and next to me a boy almost my mirror image, just a little thinner, a little paler. Timothy. The name felt both foreign and achingly familiar, like a word on the tip of your tongue that you know you should remember. In the picture, we were standing in front of that twisted oak, both of us grinning up at something just out of frame. I flipped the locket over. Engraved on the back, in childish scrawl, Brothers forever, don't let them forget. I spent the day driving aimlessly, trying to piece together fragments that kept slipping away. I'd remember a moment, Timothy and me building a fort out of fallen branches, laughing as we dragged pine boughs over a hollow beneath the whispering tree. And then, like sand through my fingers, it would morph suddenly. The fort was in the hayloft of the Thompsons' barn, and Timothy wasn't there at all. Just me, alone, pretending I had someone to play with. Each shift left me nauseous, dizzy, like the world had lurched a fraction of an inch sideways and no one else noticed. I stopped at a gas station and bought a notebook, scribbling down everything I could still hold on to. The smell of damp moss, the way the bark felt rough and warm under my palms, the low murmuring that sounded almost like lullabies. I dated every page, terrified that tomorrow those details would be gone too. By evening, I was back in Seattle, but I couldn't bring myself to go to my apartment. Too many changes had happened there, books appearing, photos altering themselves. Instead, I checked into another motel, this one downtown, surrounded by noise and people. Safety in numbers, I told myself. I spread everything out on the small table. The locket, the child's drawing, printouts of the old newspaper articles, the few photos I'd salvaged from my parents' house before everything started shifting too fast. I stared at them for hours, looking for patterns, for proof, and that's when I noticed something I'd missed before. In every picture where the forest should have been visible, there was a faint blurring at the edges, like someone had taken an eraser to reality itself. Not just in my photos, in the newspaper clippings too. The images of the burned woods were strangely soft, details smeared, as if the camera couldn't quite focus on what it was seeing. I fired up my laptop and started searching again, deeper this time. Not the surface-level Mandela Effect forums, but the older archives, the places people warned you not to go late at night. I found threads from the early 2000s, people describing similar personal shifts. One post, buried in a now-defunct forum, caught my eye. A user named Eldridge Kid 82 wrote about growing up near the old Cox place and remembering two boys always playing in the woods that everyone else swears were never there. They described the whispering tree exactly as I remembered it. Faces in the bark, voices that knew your secrets. The last line of the post chilled me. I think the fire was a story they told to make us forget what really happened, but it's starting to come back, and I hear them at night now. The account had been deleted years ago, but someone had screenshotted it. I saved everything. That night, the whispers returned, softer than before, almost gentle. Adam, you left me. I sat bolt upright in bed, heart hammering. The voice wasn't in the room. It was inside my head, intimate, like a thought that wasn't mine. I grabbed my phone and started recording audio, whispering questions into the dark. Who are you? What do you want? Silence at first, then the faintest reply, caught on the recording when I played it back later, a child's voice, thin and distant. I waited. You promised. I played it over and over until the battery died, tears streaming down my face without me realizing it. Timothy. It had to be. The next few weeks blurred into a desperate search for answers. I took time off work, claiming a family emergency. I drove back to Maine one more time, but I didn't go to the house. Instead, I went to the town cemetery, an old overgrown place on a hill overlooking Eldridge. I walked the rows of weathered stones, boots sinking in the damp grass, looking for any mention of Timothy Cox. Nothing. No grave, no record. But as I turned to leave, something caught my eye. A small, unmarked stone half hidden under ivy at the edge of the plot. I knelt and pulled the vines away, carved faintly into the granite, almost worn smooth by time. A simple oak tree, branches twisting into what looked like reaching arms. Beneath it, two initials, AC plus TC. My breath fogged in the cold air. Someone had been here, remembering. On the drive back, the shifts intensified. Road signs flickered, town names changing mid-read, mile markers jumping. My GPS kept rerouting me toward Eldridge no matter how many times I corrected it. I pulled over on a deserted stretch, hands shaking on the wheel, and called my mom. I hadn't spoken to her since everything started unraveling. Mom, did I ever have a brother? Long pause, then her voice, gentle but confused. Adam, sweetheart, you know you're an only child. Why would you ask that? I pressed. No twin? No one named Timothy? She sighed, the way she did when I was little and had nightmares. You had an imaginary friend for a while, around the time you were 8. You called him Timmy. We thought it was sweet. The line went quiet. Imaginary. The word hit like a slap. But that night, in yet another motel, something new happened. I dreamed, not the fragmented nightmares I'd been having, but a clear, vivid memory. Timothy and I, hiding in the hollow beneath the whispering tree during a thunderstorm. Lightning flashing, illuminating the faces in the bark. And then, shapes moving between the trunks. Tall, thin, made of shadow and bark both, eyes like faint embers. They didn't speak aloud, but we heard them anyway. Promises, invitations. Come with us. Stay forever. No more loneliness. Timothy looked at me, eyes wide. They say we can be together always if we go. I grabbed his hand, pulled him out into the rain, running until we burst into the field behind our house. But when I turned back, the tree was glowing faintly, and one of the shapes was reaching for Timothy. I yanked him harder, and we made it inside. The next morning, the woods were gone, just pasture. And Timothy, he was quieter, paler, until one day, he simply wasn't there anymore, and no one remembered him but me. I woke up gasping, the dream clinging to me like damp leaves. For the first time, the whispers didn't scare me. They sounded lonely. I opened the locket again and spoke to it, voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to leave you." The room grew colder, the air thick with the scent of pine. And then, so softly I almost missed it, a sigh, not threatening, but relieved, like someone who'd been waiting a very long time to be heard. Since then, the changes have slowed. Not stopped, but slowed. Photos still shift sometimes, memories flicker at the edges, but I've started writing everything down, anchoring it. And the whispers, they're still there, especially at night. But now they feel less like a threat and more like a reminder. I don't know if the forest was hidden to protect us, or if something took Timothy because I pulled him away. I don't know if the Mandela Effect is a glitch, a cover-up, or something alive that feeds on forgotten things. But I do know this: some doors, once cracked open, don't fully close. And sometimes, what slips through just wants to be remembered. If you've ever lost a memory that felt too real to be false, if you've ever woken up certain of something everyone else denies, listen closely, because they might be trying to reach you too. I've been carrying this weight for months now, ever since that dream pulled the last pieces into place. The whispers haven't gone away, they've just changed. They're quieter, more patient, like someone sitting in the corner of the room you can't quite see, waiting for you to turn around. My name is still Adam Cox. I'm still 42, still bouncing between cheap motels and long drives with no real destination. But the story isn't over. If anything, it's only just starting to settle into my bones. After that night when I spoke to the locket and felt that sigh of relief, I thought maybe things would calm down. That acknowledging Timothy out loud had given whatever was left of him some peace. For a few days they did. The air felt lighter. I slept through the night for the first time in weeks. I even drove back to Seattle, thinking I could slip into my old life, pick up the threads, pretend I was okay. But the moment I stepped into my apartment, I knew I'd been wrong. Everything looked the same at first glance, the same furniture, the same coffee mug in the sink, but the details were off in ways that made my skin crawl. The bookshelf that used to hold my old sci-fi paperbacks now had a whole row of children's books I didn't recognize. Thin, hand-bound volumes with faded cloth covers. I pulled one out with trembling fingers. The title was embossed in gold that had mostly flaked away. Stories from the Whispering Tree. Inside, handwritten pages, childish illustrations of two boys playing beneath a massive oak. The faces in the bark watched them. Every story ended the same way. One boy stays, one boy leaves, and the forest closes the door behind him. I dropped the book like it burned me. It hit the floor with a soft thud, pages splaying open to a drawing of the two of us, me and Timothy, holding hands at the edge of the field. Behind us, the pasture was there, but faint pencil lines showed the ghost of trees pressing against an invisible wall. I backed away until my shoulders hit the front door. That's when I noticed the smell. Pine, thick, sweet, overwhelming, like I'd walked into the heart of the woods. But my windows were closed. The vents were off. There was no source. I left that night, packed a single duffel bag, grabbed the locket and my notebook, and drove north with no plan. I told myself I just needed distance, but deep down I knew I was being pulled. The whispers had started again, gentle but insistent. "Come see, just once more, then you'll understand." I fought it for days, took wrong turns on purpose, looped highways, even turned off my phone so the GPS couldn't nudge me toward Maine. But every morning I woke up a little farther east than I'd been the night before. Motels I didn't remember checking into, receipts in my wallet for gas stations closer and closer to Eldridge. Finally I gave in, not because I wanted to, because I was tired, bone-deep tired of running from something that lived inside my own head. I drove straight through, 17 hours with only coffee and silence for company. The closer I got to Maine, the heavier the air felt, like the atmosphere itself was thickening with memory. When I crossed the town line into Eldridge just after dawn, fog hung low over the fields, soft and gray. The old Victorian house looked smaller than I remembered, paint even more peeled, windows staring blankly. I didn't stop there. I went straight to the back field. The grass was tall, swaying in a wind I couldn't feel. I walked the same path I'd taken that night months ago, past the spot where I dug up the box, past the faint depression where the root had been. And then I saw it, not the full forest, not yet, but something was growing. A single sapling, no taller than my waist, had pushed up through the soil overnight. Its trunk was pale, almost white, bark already twisting into subtle shapes that suggested faces if you stared too long. Fresh green leaves trembled in the still air. I knelt in front of it, heart thudding slow and heavy. The ground around it was soft, dark, rich, like it had been waiting for this exact moment. I reached out and touched the bark. It was warm, alive in a way no tree should feel under human fingers. The whispers rose all at once, not in my ears but everywhere, surrounding me, gentle, welcoming. You came back. I closed my eyes and let the memories flood in without fighting them this time. Timothy laughing as we raced through pine needles, building that fort together, hiding from the storm. The tall shapes offering forever friendship, forever play. No more growing up, no more loneliness. I remembered the fear, yes, but also the temptation. How part of me had wanted to stay. How I'd pulled Timothy away not just to save him, but because I was afraid to lose him if he chose them over me. When I opened my eyes, the sapling had grown. Not dramatically, no time-lapse magic, but enough that new branches had unfurled while I knelt there. One thin limb curved toward me, leaves brushing my cheek like a child's hand. I didn't flinch. Tears ran down my face, hot and silent. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I should have stayed with you." The air shimmered. Just for a second, the field flickered, like an old film reel skipping frames, and I saw it, the edge of the forest, dense and dark, pressing right up to where I knelt. The whispering tree stood tall behind the sapling, ancient and patient, and beneath it, a small figure waved. Timothy, older than in the photos, but unmistakably him. He smiled, the same missing tooth grin from when we were little, and beckoned. I stood up slowly. The vision faded as quickly as it came, leaving only the sapling and the empty field. But the scent of pine lingered. The warmth stayed on my cheek where the leaf had touched me. I understood then. The Mandela shift wasn't punishment. It wasn't random. It was a door closing, to protect the world outside from what lived in the woods, and to protect the children who stayed from ever having to leave. When I pulled Timothy out, the door slammed shut behind us. The fire story, the vanished forest, the erased memories, they were the lock clicking into place. But locks wear down over time. Memories push through cracks. And when someone on the outside starts remembering too loudly, the door creaks open again. I go back now. Not every day, but often enough. I sit by the sapling and talk to him. I tell him about the years he missed, about growing up, falling in love once or twice, the quiet ache of being alone even in crowds. I read him the stories from the books that keep appearing in my bag no matter how many times I leave them behind. The tree grows a little each time I visit, slowly, patiently. Other saplings have started sprouting nearby, faint outlines in the grass that only I can see. Sometimes, late at night wherever I'm staying, I wake to find soft green leaves on my pillow, or a small twig tucked into my notebook like a bookmark. Gifts, I think. Reminders that he's waiting, that the door isn't locked anymore, just ajar. I don't know how this ends. Maybe one day the forest will grow back fully, and the world will shift again to make room for it. Maybe I'll walk in and never come out. Or maybe I'll keep living half in each reality, half remembered, half forgotten, until the edges blur completely. But if you ever find yourself doubting a childhood memory that feels too real to be false, if you smell pine where there shouldn't be any, or hear a child's voice calling your name from an empty room, don't fight it, just listen. Some doors were never meant to stay closed forever, and some brothers keep their promises, even when the whole world forgets they were ever made.